Hello, good evening, or good morning. Welcome to another live stream. It is February, the month of February, and our theme is dreams. I started this last week during the live stream and kind of came up with the idea, not necessarily came up with the idea, but sort of decided that I would work on this throughout the live streams and the Zoom meetings for the rest of the month. Let's see who's here. Ariana's here. Hi, and Kelly and Amy. You finally made one. That's great. Sorry. I started this last week, and we talked a little bit about dreams, and I mean dreams as in the ones that you have at night, so not the dreams for, say, the future. And we talked a little bit about that, and you kind of automatically go from that to the subject that is more art related, which is drawing without a reference, basically, right? Because I'm not having a reference right now in front of me or on the screen. And I got a few responses from you through email or personal messaging, what's it called? Messages on social media about that subject, and yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that today. So I spent a whole week staring at this panel, this thing, and not wanting to touch it. Like, I kind of wanted the live stream to start where the previous live stream ended. And one of the things that bothered me is, I'm gonna grab a pencil, is this shape here. This is very unfinished, so this has a lot of, you can go along with, but this was too decided last week. Here's the thing with oil paint and making adjustments. It is not a thing where you go, like with acrylic, let me gesso over that and do it again. I am going to do that, by the way, but I will explain to you why after I explain to you why you cannot always do that. And it has to do with the fact that acrylic gesso, provided we're talking about acrylic gesso, right? Which most gessos, things that we call gessos, are actually acrylic primers. You can't really go over an oil paint layer with any kind of acrylic paint, including gesso, unless that oil paint layer is like a million years dry, right? So this is something I'm going to do because I can feel right here that this is a very dry layer. There's a lot of GAMs all in here. It was a very fast drying pigment to begin with. And I'll explain a little bit about why I make these choices sometimes, but I do want to add the disclaimer that this is not a process that is sustainable or archivable when you work on stuff that you want to keep. So that was the disclaimer. I have a giant jar of gesso right here. Hi Linda, welcome. Drawing without a reference results in childish work because I need to practice sketching more, although intuitive work is still interesting. Cool, yeah, that's a cool way of looking at it. I will say that drawing without a reference, what it did for me, other than you know, it being sort of intuitive and it being, yeah, different. Let's you know, call it different, is that I tapped into a part of my brain that actually had a bunch more knowledge of how to draw stuff than I thought I had. So when I left a reference for what it was, I actually realized that it was not that hard to draw things from my mind because I had increased the amount of knowledge that I had previously. And it's kind of a fun way sometimes also to test where you're at. Hi, Sean. So, like I said, I'm gonna carve out this area here with acrylic gesso. This is oil paint on paper, and this is by no means an archivable way of working. So I thought about it a little bit. I'm going to explain to you why I choose to do this. And I also considered other options. My other option would be to use white oil paint. Now, white oil paint is the slowest drying paint on the face of the earth. You can speed up that process. Please don't use lead white. Like, I'm European. Some of you are European, so you can't even get your hands on lead white. If you can, please be very careful with it. Lead white is a fast drying white. But I have titanium and Litopone. And I really want to be able to work on this area Friday during the Zoom call. So that was my sort of, but even if I wanted to continue working on it, say next week during the live stream, I don't think titanium white. Yeah, maybe. It's winter here, so maybe not. So that was my option. The thing that you can add to titanium white oil paint to make it dry faster is an alkyd medium. So that would definitely be an option. I chose this because of the simple reason that I want to take advantage of the fact that we're doing exploration. We're exploring, right? We talked about it last week, about the difference in process between exploring ideas, exploring composition shape, but also exploring materials and how they work and how they interact. And it means that some of that stuff, or it means in my case that some of that stuff that I make, I don't need to keep. And I definitely therefore don't need it to be archival. Now there are people who say that you shouldn't practice what you don't use in your routine when you create. I don't know where that comes from. I know that idea also goes around the music industry a lot. Like, I was told when I played the violin that you need to practice the way that you play. So if you practice things wrong, then there's no point in practicing. Now, violin people are notoriously savage. But I think what people forget is that there is a difference between practicing a skill and exploring things. Yeah, exploring, like if you have a violin and you want to explore some kind of sound, dream that you had, some kind of thing that is in your head, does it really matter if everything is set up perfectly correct, your posture is perfect? No, it does not, right? I do understand that if you're going to practice arpeggios or something, yeah, you might want to do that correctly. And the same applies to art, where if you want to practice blending, you want to practice, I don't know what. It's a different intent than exploring this. So if this somehow disintegrates by Friday, I will let you know. I will have concluded that it was a really bad idea. Let me check the chat. I find that you never know which practice and experimentation end up in your work. Yeah. The worst work can end up being a big step in your development. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The thing with exploration and practice is that you got to do it for the exploration and the practice, right? You can't, I used to subconsciously still try to get like an Instagrammable artwork out of it, and would then sabotage my own practice routine and my exploration, right? You got to do it 100%. And part of it is unusable. It's just the nature of the game. All right. Let me see. So someone who had a big fail this week, I decided my sick-versary portrait was, oh no. So you want to tell me about it? Like, did you throw it away? Like, I hope not. Sean has an unpopular opinion about archivability. Sean, you cannot leave us hanging like this. We are such fans of unpopular opinions. Maybe we should call this live stream Unpopular Opinions. So please share. Amy, what exactly is an alkyd? An alkyd is an addition, a medium, also called an alkyd resin, because it has that chemical structure, and it's a paint medium for oil paint that helps the paint layer dry faster, and it also helps the paint layer dry more even. So if you have some thicker layers, an alkyd resin medium can help it dry at the same time top to bottom, right? I am lost for words here. The thing with oil paint layers, if they're too thick, is the risk that the top is going to dry and the bottom is not, or the underlying area is not dry and starts to wrinkle. So that alkyd resin medium helps it dry throughout, right? One thing, it has a little bit of solvent in it. So if you're hypersensitive to that, Yeah, keep that in mind. Now, it's not a lot. I use Galkit by Gamblin. Yes, Gamblin. This product starting with the letter G just drive me crazy. So Gamblin has two alkyd mediums, Galkit and Galkit Light, and Light dries a little bit slower. So there you go. Linda, practicing something that is structured is different than exploring. Yeah, absolutely. Sean, I think that paintings being subject to aging and decay just gives them work. Yeah, true. That is definitely true. Like, there is, let me get some paint on, by the way. There is this obsession with having to paint not crack and paint not, I don't know what. I actually think we're gonna find that 100 years from now, 200 years from now, the paintings that are made now won't be as cracked as the older paintings, because the quality has increased. Also, I don't really care. Probably like you, like archivability became such a rabbit hole at some point that it just took the joy out of painting. And the other thing with archivability, or museum quality, as people like to call it, is that museum quality is only guaranteed if your painting is stored under museum quality-like conditions. So unless you live in a house with climate control, your museum quality materials are not going to do what you want them to do. I feel like archival people are like the straight edge vegans of the paint world, and I think you just summarized like my whole feeling towards that in one sentence. That is a very good way of putting it. All right, I have some Green Earth here by Old Holland, and I'm gonna try. I don't know why I picked such a tiny brush. Not thinking. I'm gonna darken this background. So the whole purpose of this background is that it's going to be pretty dark. But I kind of wanted to have a dark with, yeah, a bit of variation, a bit of color depth. And I also cannot make up my mind. And so we're just gonna glaze this probably for like the whole month. I'm using a solvent-free medium, the fluid one from Gamblin. And you can tell, right, Green Earth, here, let me get some without the medium. Green Earth is a semi-transparent pigment to begin with. And here's another thing about the whole rule-bound vibe surrounding oil paint and archivability is that fat over lean obsession they have. Fat over lean is not the correct way to put it. What they actually mean is they mean slow drying over fast drying. And this fat over lean idea comes from a time when they didn't have stuff like alkyds. They didn't have stuff like Gamblin solvent-free medium, which also decreases the drying time a little bit. They just had oil. And so in the whole process of fat over lean, you would do glazing all the way at the end, because it would be the fattest layer, because you would also add linseed oil to make the layer more transparent. Now, we don't live in the 16th century anymore, thank the universe. So what we can do is we can glaze, and then we can let that dry, and we can go back in with more opaque paint and then glaze that. Because we have affordable transparent and semi-transparent pigments that require very little medium, little to no actually. You could do this without medium, but you would have to scrub hard, and I don't want to scrub that hard in front of my microphone, but you can do it without medium. Just scrub, right? Glazing is not, sometimes people think it's this really thick, slick layer, but it's not. You can scrub it in, and you can take a piece of cloth and rub it out. Yeah. Let me read up. I don't know if exalting the object of painting and trying to make it closer to mortal is not for me. Maybe. Can you paint over Galkit later? Yes, you can paint over Galkit later. There are cases, I've read about this. I have not experienced it myself. I don't use a lot of Galkit. If you use a little bit too much, sometimes the layer becomes a little bit plasticky, like closed off. And if you then want to continue painting on it, it doesn't grip as well, but you can rub that layer a little bit with a little bit of Gamsol to sort of break the surface tension, right? Before you continue, okay? By the way, this is what I appreciate about American art brands is Gamblin, and also like Golden Paints and stuff like that. Gamblin has a lot of great articles on their website regarding their products, like kind of informing you of how to use it, but also the issues that you might run into. So I would definitely check that out if I were you. Yes, the reference definitely makes sense. Hi, Rosie. Hi, welcome. We're talking a lot and painting very little. Still kind of not sure if I want more. Yeah, I probably want more like figures here maybe. But nothing pops up in my head. I'll probably do that later. Like this is all like wasted space. Okay. Just gonna. Hi, Libby. Oh, my tape is coming off. I feel like sometimes when you have oil paint paper like taped and you work with, sometimes it's a Gamsol, which obviously probably dissolves a little bit of the adhesion. But also oil paint is like, oil and solvents are not great. Can do a little bit of if we can build that background up a little bit. Green earth is also like umbers, a pigment that dries relatively quickly. Like it dries a lot quicker than ultramarine blue or a lot of the reds. Okay. That looks pretty dry. Let's see. I have a friend who lectures me every time he uses Gaukit about how it's not archival. We're gonna see in 200 years when our work is going to be in the biggest museums in the world, provided the world still exists, we're gonna see if it's archival or not. There's a thing with archivability, right? Like alkyds are what? I don't know how old they are. From the 1930s or maybe? I know them from house paint, but yeah. We're gonna see. Very little, I think, that is in museums would be considered now archival, right? It exists because people keep inventing new, like, what's it called? The conservative thingies, like the people who do with the little cotton blobs. They take off the little layers and they paint new ones. I'm very close to my microphone now, so I'm sorry if this is loud. Boom. Gesso is dry. I appreciate that. I love to finger paint sometimes with acrylic. I haven't done it in a while. I use glazing medium when I do. It helps to move the, yeah, the whole, like, there was somebody, and I saw her once on Instagram. Maybe some of you guys know who I mean, but she does actual giant portraits with her fingers. She wears gloves, but she does it every day. And what she does is she has like an acrylic slow drying medium or like a retarder or something like that. And she will pre-mix a lot of shades that she needs, like a lot of values and colors, and puts them in the little sippy cups. And then just with her fingers and with her hands, where she pours stuff on and she moves it around, just looking at it and thinking about it now. Has this calming effect, right? That's how I feel about archival DS, right? In 200 years, I'll let you all know if your works are exactly, right? Like somebody's got to go back in time and be like, maybe you shouldn't have used that alkyd medium. You have our book. Oh, cool. Maybe we're talking about the same. If not, then there are more cool people who do that. Yeah, your finger paintings sound great. This is, by the way, my super archival Stadler mechanical pencil. It's been approved by German architect, so I'm pretty sure it's not going anywhere. Oh, this is wet. Mwah. It'll be fine. This is why I don't do graphite on live streams. It's not only slow, like it's the slowest thing ever, but it kind of puts me in a trance where I start sort of vibrating with your movements, so you go like, oh. Let me see. I have painted a painting. I have a painting that I used non-archival Holbein fluorescent pink. Oh damn. Is it Iris Scott? Or yeah, it could be. I think her name started with Iris. That could be. I'm gonna try and remember. I'm gonna write that down. Hold on. Yeah, I don't think it's her. But she does make really great paintings. I love it when you guys make suggestions. Isn't that why a lot of artists sign with a pencil? Because it's... Oh, really? Oh, you're both talking about Iris. That's really cool. I just ran her through a search engine. I'm gonna check it out later a little bit more. Like, I don't think graphite or charcoal is like in any way. You know, the stupid thing is it never occurred to me to look up like a test for that. I'll look up all the tests for pigments. But yeah, I don't think there's ever been like a charcoal or graphite drawing that faded. Like, one thing I like, by the way, with graphite, because I did not a lot, like a couple of experiments with, you know, working with charcoal and then oil paint, or painting charcoal into wet oil paint, or painting oil paint over areas of charcoal. So the latter, where you paint over charcoal, that was a bit of an issue, because what you kind of do, I'm talking about vine or willow, you know, it kind of picks up already pretty easily, is that your brush with oil paint kind of just wipes the charcoal off, right? So that was a bit like meh. Going into wet oil paint, you gotta, like, ideally you would have your layer be a little bit tacky for it to sort of blend, like give a certain specific effect, but not drown in the oil paint, you know? But graphite is easier, and it's probably because it's a lot harder. Like, see, this is pretty wet. And I can still, you kind of draw, I think, through the layer onto the paper. I think that's what's kind of happening. Fluorescent paint. Fluorescent paint and Rembrandt would probably just be, I think it would choose a different profession if all there was fluorescent paint. I finger paint with acrylic though. Iris Scott uses oil. Oh, okay. The Duo Aqua, those are cool. Those are cool. You would have some fun, yeah. So this is giving me like a little bit more, there was an idea, and you know, the early stage sort of, yeah, made it difficult for me to progress with the idea that I had. And this process of just going in and saying, okay, well, we're gonna put some gesso on there, see what happens. First of all, nothing happens. There is nothing dramatic going on here. But it speeds up it allows you to go forward with your idea. And honestly, up until like 20 minutes before this live stream, I was still considering still doing this with white oil paint and then doing the whole thing with alkyd medium and all kinds of additions that I've done in the past in order to produce a white that is fast drying and stable. But I'm glad I didn't, because that would have probably taken me an hour to do. And then I would still have to wait for all of it to dry, and I would have to move on with different areas, and this area was just bothering me to no end. Like, this is the art of making it really difficult for yourself. The stuff I do sometimes is like, did you grow up with Fiep Westendorp illustrations? Your figures? Ah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Yes, I grew up with them. Yeah, I don't know anybody who did not grow up with them my age. Like, yeah, it's really funny, you know. Yeah, it does a little bit. I will say though, the way that that woman managed to simplify not just objects or things or people, but whole ranges of emotions is, you don't realize, like as a kid, you go like, yay, Yippee Janneke, woo. But later as an adult, you look back and you go like, wow, you know? It is easier to draw something realistic, you know, something that's there, than to sort of convey something with that, yeah, those limitations. I don't think it were limitations to her. I don't know if you can call it limitations. But to like a normal, non-genius demigod person, it looked like limitations. Yeah, this is very Dutch, but you should all look it up. Yeah, we have, you know, Dick Bruna, who created Nijntje, which you probably all know as Miffy, you know, the bunny, the white bunny with the white ears, which is also, he has a museum in my hometown. And they play this movie always about, you know, how he talks about the process of simplification and the process of also of perfecting simple shapes. Because you look at it, some people look at it and think it must be quick or it must be easy or it must be, and then you see this guy talking about his whole process, and it's like I said, it's genius on a different level. And Fiep Westendorp actually, yeah, I probably had more children's books illustrated by her than I had of Miffy. Like, Miffy's Miffy, right? I still can't get over the fact that you call her Miffy. Who came up with that? I think it was a marketing thing, where Nijntje, because Nijntje is sort of a abbreviation or short childish word for konijntje, which is a rabbit, which is what she is. But I think the I sound was very difficult for everybody not Dutch. Everybody who isn't Dutch or Belgian. And so they came up with a different name to market her. Is it a her or a he or a they? And it's not a he. Maybe it's a they. I don't know. So this is more of a drawing session then. Let me get some charcoal. Hold up. Do I need, yeah, I do need something to be dry. So let's quickly grab a little bit of raw umber. Nine is a girl, yeah. Okay, I got that right. It's also one of those things that I kind of appreciate about that. Like, as a child, I never really thought about the gender, because the illustrations are just incredibly gender neutral, so... So this is Raw Umber by Michael Harding, which is like, okay, it's a raw umber, which is fine. One thing I did notice, or something to keep in mind when you are like me and not always pay attention, is that when you put down graphite, like here, you saw that on the first layer. Maybe it's not entirely visible on screen. I kind of hope it is. You will see that you still saw the lines, and then I went over it a second time, and then it comes off, right? So let's see. You can kind of get away with a little bit of paint on top. See, this is very thin, and you can still see the lines. Whereas here, I kind of rubbed them into the oil. So that is something that is also, you know, if you do stuff like this and you mix media, you'll run into things like that. And it's a lot more, like, it's fine when you figure this stuff out when you're just doing shit on a live stream on a piece of paper. Whereas if you make this whole intricate drawing and then go over it and the whole thing disappears. I think that happened with one of my portrait live stream drawings, where I was like, oh, that was my drawing. I worked on that drawing for a whole hour. And it did not occur to me that it would dissolve. The other thing, by the way, that is a good thing, a fun thing, is that this is an easy way to remove pencil. Yeah, if you want to remove it from a panel that has, or a canvas that has paint on it. You can check it off with paint or with oil. Now everybody knows our Dutch illustrated. I'm very happy about that. I love the transparency going on. Thank you. I like transparency. It's my thing. I'm gonna do this bottom layer. Get a little bit of coverage, and it's gonna look like the same value for a little while as the, or close to the same value. But this I'm going to add more layers to Friday. Friday on the Zoom call, right? So Friday, this Friday, we have a Zoom art club, which is a fancy way of saying we're gonna hang out in my Zoom room. And then I'm gonna do some painting and you're gonna do some talking. And, you can definitely ask me like questions, anything you want. But it's just casual, okay? So you don't need to prepare anything. It is awesome watching your painting, and thank you. Come together. I'm talking on the phone, watching on the big TV. That was really cool. I'm just gonna add a little bit here. And then sort of check that out. And what I like is that you get the weird little, see these dark edges where it kind of blends with the, like it picks up the graphite particles, the pigment. Like I think graphite is technically also a pigment. I have never seen a graphite oil paint. I do have an acrylic that is called graphite, but I'm not really sure if it's actual like graphite particles in there. Kind of gives these nice edges that they sort of remind me of watercolor, where you get the pooling of the pigment. Okay, we got one little piece to go. One little area. And then I'm gonna rub in the rest of that raw umber here, because raw umber is one of those pigments. All earth pigments, by the way, are pigments that are going to be dry the next day on your palette, right? They're not pigments that stay open for a long time. Cool. All right, let me close my jar of solvent-free fluid because I'm gonna knock it over. Sean has to take off. Bye. Say hi to your dogs. Let me catch up. Cool. I love learning new things. Gotta keep learning. All right. Thank you for joining me. I think, yeah, I'm happy with the progress and with the, decisions that I made to make my life easy, to make my process easy. I'm just kidding when I say, I'm going to see if this holds up until Friday. I'm pretty sure it's going to hold up. I don't think there's anything dramatic going on here other than, I like this interaction between graphite and oil paint, and I honestly never thought I would like that I would, yeah, you got to do it. And then you go oh, this is kind of cool. So this is kind of cool. And I hope you can join me on Friday. You can also drop in without audio or video and say hi in the chat on Zoom if you want. It's all very low-key, low pressure. And I always love hearing you guys talk as I draw and paint. So thank you for joining me again. And I will see some of you on Friday. And if not, then hopefully I will see you next week during the last live stream of February. All right, have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye.